Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Hi there. This mic's very high. Good morning. I'm Kelly Schindler. I'm the executive director here at the Fabric Workshop. Thank you so much for joining us here today for this very exciting panel discussion with John Corbett, Neneh Cherry, and Naima Karlsson. I'm just going to say a few words, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mark Chrisman. So this show just opened Thursday night. We're so delighted to bring Moki Cherry's work into the world and to share it with all of you. You get to literally sit inside her exhibition. And this show's been many years in the making, and we're just very pleased for this partnership with Ars Nova Workshop, which really helps amplify the specific talents of both of our institutions, Ars Nova Workshop on the music side, Fabric Workshop on the visual art and art making side. And I want to extend a warm thank you to both of our extraordinary teams for all of their work and dedication getting us to this point. And so for those of you that came right upstairs to the 8th floor, make sure before you leave today that you go check out the rest of Moki's show on the 1st floor in the back gallery. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't invite you to also visit our shop. There are some Moki products in there too. And I think I'll stop there and turn it over to Mark, and thank you again for joining today. We're gonna talk for about an hour, and then feel free to take some more time and see the show. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Again, I'm Mark Chrisman from Ars Nova Workshop. Thanks to Kelly and the amazing team at the Fabric Workshop. Of course, thanks to everybody at Ars Nova Workshop for making this dream come true. I just want to share that Ars Nova, and thanks to everybody for coming to the opening. Thanks for being here. Ars Nova and the Fabric Workshop will be presenting a full season of performances and other programs. There is still a lot to unfold and to announce. The show runs until mid-April, and we'll be inviting you to more performances, more discussions, more discursive activities. So be on the lookout. Our next event is on October 12th. It will be Natural Information Society. That's Lisa Alvarado's ensemble that she co-leads with Joshua Abrams. That's on October 12th. There's literally like 7 tickets left. Maybe right now on your phone. So don't hesitate. I want to thank some of our funders. Of course, the Pew Center for Arts and Heritage, the Kobe Foundation, Pennsylvania Department of Economic and Community Development, the Robert Berlecki Foundation, and the American Scandinavian Foundation. We're all deeply grateful to them. Finally, I want to thank John Corbett. John Corbett, who is a writer, curator, scholar, sometimes DJ. He is going to introduce our guest of honor, of course, but through Corbett and Dempsey, his gallery in Chicago, he has presented the work of Moki previously. So he was able to kind of whisper in my ear with some expertise. He said, less is more once. And then I thought, well, more is more. But there's a nice balance. So let's please welcome John Corbett.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
With you guys? Does that work?
I'm going to come just sit a bit closer. It feels nicer.
Yeah. This is my better ear, so that's why I'm doing it this way. Then I can hear you guys.
Hey, everybody. What's up? What's up?
So I'm meant to introduce these guys, so I'm going to introduce them. This is Neneh Cherry.
Hi.
This is the fantastic Naima Karlsson.
My beautiful daughter.
This is the powerhouse mother-daughter team. Yeah, amazing. Well, mother-daughter teams are prevalent here. There's another mother-daughter team represented in the room right now, which is mother-daughter, right? And granddaughter. So it's lineages of motherdom here. And I kind of wanted to start out talking a little bit about the stewardship of the work that's in this room, which all more or less came from two sites. And you guys have been living with and taking care of and seeing to the presentation of this work since Moki's passing. And I kind of wanted to just ask you to talk a little bit about those two sites, because they're an ocean apart, and they represent something very different, each of those two sites, one in Sweden and one in New York. They represent something quite different, each of them in Moki's life. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, basically, you mean like the two places as being family hubs. I mean, we have a sort of, we call it the mothership. It's our source and our kind of main family home, which is in southern Sweden. And as a family, we moved there in 1970. And we still have this place, and it's where now, basically, all of Don and Moki's kind of legacy is there. But we also had a loft, and when you're speaking of these two places, we were as a family, we were always commuting and traveling, spending time between Sweden and here. And in 1977, we moved into a building in Long Island City where other artists also lived, like the Talking Heads were on one floor, one of the members of the Modern Lovers, and other art. It was a kind of artist community. In fact, we came in a taxi just now, and the guy driving us was from Brooklyn, and he was asking us where we were from, and we were like, yeah, we used to live in Long Island City, and he was like, shit, in the 70s it was really fucked up in those days. Now it's like another world. So from 1977, we had this place, and in a way, as a kind of organic unit, it became like a New York version of the place that we had in Sweden. But of course, it was our house in Sweden is an old Swedish schoolhouse that was built in the late 1800s, and the place we had in New York was an old factory, in the very scruffy Long Island city.
Industrial.
But the way that Moki and Don and the way that we lived there as a family, I think that even though they were very different, they were used. And of course, in a similar way, creatively. But of course, I think what they were producing was, because of the environment, was in a way maybe quite different. So Moki, I mean, maybe, I don't know if I'm even answering your question, because I don't know whether I really maybe perceived it correctly. But I think that Moki was, maybe a lot of people don't know, I don't know how many people really know about it, but she was very active as a kind of on the underground in New York as an artist. And I mean, I think in a way at times she was almost more active in New York than she was in Sweden. What would you like to add to that, Naima? I feel sometimes you're so eloquent and much
keep going.
But then, so just to kind of round it off, Moki died in 2009, and our kind of maid mafia landlord, he was like, kicked us out after a couple of years. We tried to sweet talk him. We tried to keep the loft, because it became an installation in a way, in itself. Of course, there were lots of artworks, but the actual space that started out as just this empty space had just layers and layers and layers of course, artworks, but also things that Moki collected that she was going to make art with, and things, there was one place where there were just layers of Portuguese sardine can lids just hanging on a hook.
Yeah.
So,
And it was about the same size as this floor, this space, but half of it was a studio.
Yeah, and
So
it
it
had
was a lot.
17 windows. Yeah, it was a lot. So now all of the stuff, more or less, from that loft has gone to Sweden.
I mean, it's interesting to me because there's a shrine-like quality about a lot of, like, the way that the work functions. Like, I had the great Jim Dempsey, and I had the great pleasure of visiting Tågarp in southern Sweden and spending a weekend with Naima and Neneh there and getting to really see the installation in that house, which is also, there's lots of little shrines sort of all over the place. But what's also interesting is you think of a shrine and you think of something that kind of has a permanence in a way, but I feel like Moki was always also working with the temporariness in mind, and maybe that had to do with the fact that, especially in the era of the tapestries, they were often being used as backdrops for performance or environments for performance. So they would happen and then they'd move on. So it would be a question of it being a temporary shrine.
Well, they were living spaces, and I think the shrine, there's something very beautiful there, but then it also slightly terrifying, because I think, when someone dies, and both Don and Moki are gone, there is a kind of course, in all the grief and there is this kind of, in the beginning, you don't want to move anything, you don't want to touch anything, and I think there's a risk that things freeze, and that they become just, it's almost like lifeless.
Right.
And that you start to objectify or live with the things in a kind of museum-like way. And I think that Don and Moki were so dedicated and passionate about the process of life and the continuation of energy, living, being in the now, but the force of creative energy. And I know that in the beginning, after Moki died, I didn't want to move anything, and it took us a while, I think, as a family. And I think that my children and my grandchildren are such an important part of the kind of concept of how we continue. And Naima, you were able, when we were all kind of paralyzed, because Moki died very suddenly. She was only 66, so she's only a few years older than I am now. And I lost my shit for a while, to say. But Naima, who had also been helping and working with Moki, kind of in a very natural way, was able to, work to know how to continue,
I mean, that was clear coming there. It was really wonderful getting a sense of how, the space was still a space to be lived in and to be, and part of the living was then also dealing with the archive. Because you were really kind of deep in working through what was there and still making discoveries.
Still now.
There were things that were covered in bat guano. And
exactly. Up in the attic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like you said, it's very much it's very much still a family home and a home that we actually live there. We don't all live there all the time, but we go there at different times of the year. When Moki passed away, that was quite suddenly. Not like we never know when it's going to happen, but she probably didn't think it was going to happen then.
Right then.
And it's a big place. Our house that was school, it's not built to be a house. It's got big rooms and big attic. So in some ways, good and bad, it meant that Moki really never got rid of anything, because there's just boxes and boxes and drawers and boxes and piles of stuff in the attic. When she got tired of it, just put it up there. On the other hand, it's good because we've found so many things, but it takes time and it's quite chaotic. And then there'll just be drawers, full of random notes, full of some weird receipts and some other, music sheets and letters and photos.
You can't pick up a box. Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say a funny example. You can't, Moki would do this cleaning up, so-and-so's coming, okay. I'm just going to take
redecorate.
all this stuff on the table and just put it in a cardboard box and sort it out later. So like what you were talking about,
Yeah.
some of the boxes will have like receipts and some old bills and like some airplane tickets and maybe a newspaper. And like in one of those boxes, Naima had found a backstage pass that Allen Ginsberg had made himself to go into one of Don's gigs, right? And you think, yeah, this is like quite important.
Yeah. No, we went through, like, there was a box of photographs, and we're looking through photographs, and they're all amazing, and it's incredible photography of Moki and Don especially from the 60s, just this incredible, beautiful set of photographs. And then we're looking through it, and suddenly there's a photograph of Don when he was a kid on a horse in Oklahoma, right? Like, I mean, just unbelievable childhood photograph, and I'm like, uh-oh, like that's incredible.
What's it doing
Stumble upon that.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is also one of the things I wanted to like talk about a little bit, is this thing of what, a creative life like that's moving forward at the clip that life was moving forward, Moki's life was moving forward, is producing so much in a way in its wake. And then now is a time of sort of figuring out what it was, And it's interesting to see this show, I think, just to maybe say something about it that's organized in a way so that you can see things from right at the end of her life, like this group of square works here, next to things from much, much earlier. And so you're seeing, in a way, also a representation of that mix of things as you're finding them. So you're finding things that are new and things that are old right next to one another, juxtaposed. And there's a consistency between them, of course, from a craftsmanship standpoint, from a design standpoint, but then there's also really a difference. Like the 60s, 70s work has a kind of curvilinear, kind of very open, let's say, utopian feeling. And the later work has a kind of, from the 80s on, has a very different flavor, I think. And so it's really interesting to be able to see these things juxtaposed.
Yeah, and the visual language, that you see throughout, which means that it's so interesting to see how you can look at these textiles that made decades apart, or paintings right at the other side of this wall. The first two were made in 2009, the year that Moki died, and the other large three are some of the earliest paintings that she's done, in the mid-60s, but still with that visual language between these and that thread that you can really, it still makes sense to see them together. But yeah, definitely, as you said, like these, some of the last tapestries, well, she kind of went back to working with textiles in the last few years after a kind of like long break when she was really focused much more on collage, ceramics, and always was painting was a thread throughout her practice in like 5 decades. But you can really see how the kind of, I think in that time when she made these and she was like living, in New York, and the political, like environment at the time, a lot of things going on with Afghanistan and everything that, and just many different things going on in the world, that I think she was always very politically engaged and really kind of horrified with the ways that us human beings, what we've created here. So in many ways, they're quite dark, these ones, where you can see kind of themes about survival, protection, also like pollution, prisons and people being imprisoned. This one, that's the second one, Skyddsrum, which is a symbol that you see a lot in buildings in Sweden, but it means shelter, like a safe space. But she's then, taken that symbol and created that piece, and also the fire one that I think so much is just this, of course, like ancient symbol of survival. And and actually a lot of those themes are present throughout all of Moki's work, in different ways. I think a lot of people don't necessarily always know that, because also it's just see the surface of the colors and how lovely it looks.
Right.
But there's many, many different themes going on deeper than that, and many of her writings as well. And there's a catalogue at the end that's in Swedish, so unfortunately you can't all read it. There's a centre page that she made for the Utopia and Visions exhibition. But in the text there that she's talking so much really in this wordplay about spiritual awareness, about our mentality. Also, she was proposing how people could live in apartments with like permaculture, how they could be having composting and renewable energies. And always I kind of think this like interplay very much about like environmental and spiritual awareness and ecology, and almost like you can see in like especially those early paintings there, these kind of like life forms and interplay between all of, like some things that look half plant, half animal, semi-human, you know?
Yeah.
And really thinking about the bigger, broader idea of life beyond just us, and thinking about ourselves and human beings and our ego and everything.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about, like you were saying, about the continuity of harsher realities in even the earlier utopian work that like this, for instance, right, which is a deity, but it's a fierce deity. And so like using Tibetan imagery for fierce deities, which are protective but are also ferocious. So they're violent, but they're also about the violence that, attends a certain kind of awareness or enlightenment. And there's a lot of them. I mean, that center work is another fierce deity. And that's kind of a partner to the later political works in a certain respect. Maybe we can go much earlier back and really talk a little bit just historically about her entry into, like, starting out as a fashion design student and then moving kind of from there into a whole other set of creative practices.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is such a perfect place for the exhibition to be because of that, because Moki's whole practice started, with fashion and textile design and studies, and that was what she wanted to do from when she was a young teenager. And when she left school at 16 to become an apprentice in Kristianstad, a small city in southern Sweden, she was working at a women's design house there. She was an apprentice there for a couple of years, or 2 different places in that city, I think. And then she went and left, like she decided herself, like she got on the train and left her life behind. I think she changed her name to Moki around that time.
I think so, yeah.
And then she was a new person, and she said she left her southern Swedish accent behind it with that, which is like a kind of very country accent. Went to Stockholm to like be a designer, be a creative person. And she was studying pattern cutting, and she studied there for a year, and then I think someone suggested to her to apply to Beckman's design school, which is like still exists, a very well-known design school in Stockholm, and she applied and she got in, and then she went and studied there for 4 years, fashion drawing and textile design, which was, now I've come to understand through like seeing more of the documentation from her studies and her writings, that was very much based in painting. And so then it really starts to make sense how, for different reasons, her practice developed much more, into an art practice instead of being a designer, although that was very much her plan. But also, even all the photos I've seen of what she made, like the children's ones you included in your exhibition, the fabrics and clothes that she made were very much all one-off handmade pieces, sometimes painted by hand. She did also design a lot of textiles. There's one in this vitrine over there called Mexico, and one that's been produced here for the first time, a textile print design that she...
Kelly, hold your bag up.
There, a bag made from it. Yes, a print that's in a frame downstairs that never been produced as a, full fabric. from 1970, and then that was wonderful that the Fabric Workshop have been able to realize that, and his hand screen printed, and Moki would have been so excited. So yeah, with that background, I think this is a perfect place for Moki's exhibition to be, and I know she just would have been so inspired to see.
She would have been so happy about everything that's happening.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, it's interesting, isn't it, when you were speaking of that time, because obviously so much was happening, both in music and art. And I know that Moki, was kind of discovering, of course, her own language and her own dialogue, and finding like a freedom within her expression that I think was why she went beyond the fashion and the textiles, and it just started to grow. And if you go downstairs, you'll see on the back wall a picture of actually me and my mother in our apartment in the Old Town. And so all of the shapes and the forms that she was drawing and painting, it became our house. The walls, you'll see in the photo, was covered in the things that she was making. But also, the one thing I felt from listening to you that's important, both, we're here to speak about Moki, so we won't go into Dawn, but just like there was a precision, there was her process, the way that she worked was very articulate and specific. What's the word? She was an incredible craftsman, you know? And I think that she took that always with her in her process from those days of understanding, how she always wanted to know how things were made, and she often talked about how important it is to have the right tools, to have great scissors, to have, so that you can do things properly. And when you look at all of the work here, when you go in and look at how they were sewed and how she made them, they were so intricate,
Which is really maybe also at odds with the prevailing image of what a utopian artist at that time, at least retrospectively, is supposed to have been like, right? Like the hippie. Yeah. The hippie artist is supposed to be careless and not into precision. And we have this kind of image of someone who's for lack of a better word, slacker. And that's not at all what this was about. There was a communality about it. The living situation was very communal. People were coming in and out of the house, but there was a regimen, and there was just from talking to you guys about it, it's like there was a sense of order.
A kind of order and a love of beauty. Moki used to say often, I'm a fiend for beauty, and a lot of the time when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of money around, or money would come and go, and she would, but she always said, we are rich, in so many ways. And so I think there was also this idea of wanting to make the world a more beautiful place, and I think that Torgarp was very much about that. And I've always found that I get quite triggered when people say, oh, you were just like spaced out hippies. It's like, no.
Yeah.
There were a few of those around. I'm not going to lie. And, sometimes I'm sure that, but I think that there was and there's a word that I'm kind of looking for in I'm just not finding it today. I'm a bit jet lagged, but just in the idea of the process and the continuation of the work, because they were just working and seeking whatever it was they were working for. Dawn was, the music, it was like a continuous breath, in a way.
And also a lot of intention and knowledge behind that. And I think that's something that people don't always see.
Is a good word.
Yeah.
It's like both with Dawn and Moki, of course, that already had their own backgrounds in being almost specialists in their field, in their practices.
Totally.
It's like you could say the same about, say, Organic Music Album. Oh, that's just like random spaced out music. But no, Dawn had, as you know, had been very much deep in what he was doing and in the, jazz and music and improvised music for a long time, and almost to go through all of those, really understanding it, to be able to express it in a freer way. And then Moki as well was very, very much such a kind of dedicated and knowledgeable reader and person who researched so much about very traditional techniques and art forms of working with textiles, working with ceramics, how people have been doing that for thousands of years, understanding it, and so how she could do that in the now. But I think, in different ways, Don also understood what he was doing. Yeah. And then I think it's almost quite radical in a way that they were both political and very much, of course, aware and involved with much more obviously political artists, say in New York in the 60s, during the, everything that was going on then, such as Don was really close with Amiri Baraka, the Jane Cortez, and very political activist artists during the civil rights movement. And I think it was almost, it's not that they weren't thinking about that or engaged with that, but it was almost how can you propose to open your mind up to not, it was almost other ways of also to get beyond it. That's
totally,
without, it's not obviously political, but it's all there, but it's also proposing to educate the younger generation, to open up our world, beyond sometimes where we can become trapped for other reasons.
And opening was really a big part of it. I mean, the titles of some of the records are actually really helpful in terms of just providing landmarks. And I think about organic music on the one hand, which suggests the organicism that we're talking about, and that's also reflected in a lot of the shapes and the things from that and the materials, but also Relativity Suite. And I think from my perspective, Relativity is one of the really strong components of both the musical and the visual side, in the sense of opening up and incorporating. So this idea of borrowing certain elements from different cultural contexts and incorporating them into a relative relationship with one another, sometimes in the same work, sometimes between works, sometimes having. So, certainly we can hear that quite easily with the music when you hear the influence of Turkish folk music or the influence of Indian music or Indian classical music, or the ways that Don was out sort of looking for and grabbing things.
And trying to educate himself and want to educate other people from his community. I think
and I see it in the visual side too, but it doesn't get talked about as much. But the idea of making a tanka, for instance, or of incorporating some imagery from traditional tanka painting, or a sign like a street sign or a
symbol
or a symbol like that. Like that idea of looking at all of the different possible things and pulling them together. Now we talk about world music, as a thing that's obvious, but at the time that was not obvious. That was a thing that was being invented really by Don and by Moki at that time in this context of a kind of total artwork, really an absolutely total artwork, a place where it comes together all of the different kinds of performance, static art, visual art,
and kind of audio-visual, really, isn't
Absolutely, it? Yeah, right?
But when you say that, I was thinking, because when you started this talk talking about New York and Sweden, and actually I feel like they needed both of those environments. I remember you've always said that, in New York, it was very much about all the interactions with the artist community, musicians, and that was what that was about when they kind of lived half the year in each place. And Sweden, very much the freedom, living in nature, growing food, having that openness, that they were lucky to be able to have those two environments that really is, becomes different parts of their practice.
It was a balance, actually.
I mean, what's the little oval painting over here? It's got the skyscrapers on either side.
Oh, yeah. The one that says, "I won't give up."
That's the one.
Yeah.
I won't give up. Right, like I think of that as being like also very significant statement on Moki's part at that moment, right? Coming from Sweden, I think it's from right around 1970. So it's having just acquired the house in southern Sweden, but then also going back and forth because they'd just been in Dartmouth, they'd just been in, and so they're back and forth to New York a lot, and there's that sense.
And Turkey the year before, yeah, all over.
And tension in that. Like there's also kind of productive tension, but there's also tension.
Yeah. I think, one of the reasons why, I think it took them a while to figure out that they needed to lay their own roots here. So we were always kind of subletting or living kind of in a temporary, staying at the Chelsea Hotel, or and I think that they knew, obviously Don had so many of his peers and his kind of roots here, but like I was saying earlier, Moki also was very committed, and as much as she was kind of horrified by so many aspects of American culture and history, she also made amazing friends and was incredibly inspired by other artists and spending time here. So, but it took a while, right? Not until 1977 did we kind of get and take on a place permanently.
I'm thinking about the impermanence. You guys went and lived in a geodesic dome within a museum in 1970.
We spent a summer,
like 3 months, right?
Yeah.
So that was the Pontus Hulton curated show called Utopia and Visions.
Yeah, they lived in the
He was the
exhibition.
director of the Modern Museum, Pontus Hultén,
In Stockholm.
In Stockholm. And we were kind of part of the project. So a friend of ours who's an inventor and a sort of designer and architect made a dome in the garden of the Modern Museum in Stockholm. And then we basically packed up our bus with my cat and instruments and friends and people, drove from the house in southern Sweden to Stockholm to live there for the summer. And actually, we didn't live in the dome. The Modern Museum in Stockholm is built next to some old army barracks.
The story emerges.
And so we actually lived in what had been the prison in the army barracks.
The story gets worse.
In a couple cells, as you do. But Moki made them very beautiful. As she always did, she always had a trunk with a little kitchen, and she would have and fabrics, and so that's where we lived. And then the dome was an environment, kind of like a very organic. So various musicians some people were there kind of almost every day. Obviously, Don was there every day. There was a piano in there. Moki started painting a mandala. I think it's on film, on one of these films at some point, it turns out.
Yeah.
And she had her sewing machine there, and she started to make things that were kind of cushion-like figures that then started to fill the space. I think the hanging sculpture in the middle of the space here was from the dome.
Yeah.
And we would just hang out in there, and I would also hang around in the museum pretending to be a guard and telling people to not touch.
There's some
Artworks.
really good footage of Neneh vacuuming the floor.
Yeah, no, that's Eagle Eye vacuum.
Oh, yeah,
Is it?
Eagle Eye.
Yeah, it's Eagle
okay.
Eye.
All right.
That one.
Yeah.
But so we kind of lived there, and then there would whoever the Taj Mahal travelers from Japan came through, and they so there were these kind of workshops and kind of improvised sessions, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like a process space. I guess they were literally living and working in the exhibition every day for the almost 3 months. So it was like a living artwork, and then different things would happen all the time. Not so much like official performances. It was much more that they were just creating and being in there, and people could come every day, play music, Moki, there was like a lot of costumes, and then just the picture over there of Moki just sewing in there. So it was literally just a living artwork that was growing the whole time, throughout the time, which is really, I mean, yeah, quite an amazing thing, really.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, also something like that has a hard time being sustained. My observation is that those kinds of utopian situations have a lifespan. Sometimes it's quite short, but that it's a beautiful thing while it's there, and then in a way it has to transform into something.
Exactly.
And it seems to me that Moki transformed it into a whole set of other kinds of productive output material that she was working on for musicians and friends and other artists when she was in New York, and then her own work, which she was showing a little more sort of actively than we give credit to. I mean, she was in that period, in the especially late 70s, early 80s, and even into the 90s. There was, activity, things going on. She had
I
shows.
think also like she started, like Don and Moki really were in a deep collaboration throughout the kind of 70s, right? And then Moki then started to really go more into just making her artwork that wasn't so much with the idea that they would use it as for the stage and so on. I mean, even during the 70s and stuff, when she was making a lot of the tapestries to travel with, to be on the stage, she was obviously also making other artwork, but I think her...
Or the other way around. Most of them are artworks that she wanted to have exhibitions. And many of these were in her first solo exhibition in 1973. Which was
in Stockholm.
Yeah, that was in Stockholm, yeah. Like those 3 textiles there, and this sun one hanging up here, and a lot of other paintings and pieces. Really from early on, I think quite quickly when she sort of realized that the dream that she had of working in a fashion business was not that possible, being nomadic, having 2 children, living half in Sweden, not having a lot of money, etc., etc., not being able to get visas to stay here, things like that. She was just resourceful and always working on survival and what you can do with what you have. But I think from early on, she kind of already got really inspired and interested in the idea of much more as a artistic practice, showing in galleries. So yeah, I was just saying, actually, a lot of them are artworks that then she realized could also be on the stage, because most galleries did not understand what she was doing.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And I've seen so many notes where she's tried to go to present her work to different galleries during the 70s in New York and other places, or keep saying, I might have this show, and most of them didn't happen, because the next show she had a solo show of tapestries was in 79 in Los Angeles. So she didn't have a show between 73 and 79, but she made many, many works.
Yeah.
And I think all the time, that's what a lot of people don't know, she was making those works, wanting to show them, but a lot of people in that time didn't get it and thought, this isn't really art to be in a contemporary gallery, it's more like, women's sewing crafts.
Right. Well, craft had she had the kind of double whammy going, right? On the one hand, craft, and on the other hand, I think also the association with Don in a way which was, of course, very important. In another way, in terms of her autonomous presence as an artist, might have been made it more difficult.
Yeah, because it was seen in the kind of music sphere, and then people kind of thought that's what it was for. Yeah.
So it had a function. So it was both craft and function, which made it sort of doubly difficult to imagine as autonomous works of art, which is what we're seeing them as here.
Yeah. And it was ahead of its time, because now many artists working in that way, and so many artists working with textiles. It's almost so. And I think that's wonderful too, because I feel like still seeing these works now feels so kind of contemporary in many ways, and a lot of younger artists are so inspired to know about what she was doing 50 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, just to point over the wall at Lisa Alvarado's beautiful show.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what's wonderful, I think, to see these 2 exhibitions next to each other. And there's so many connections and similarities, I think, between Moki's work and Lisa's and just their kind of like core values and interests.
Yeah. I want to ask about one thing that appears a couple of times. I want to ask about the tongue. the tongue that appears in a couple of pieces, which I think is such a great image, and it feels very deliberate. And I wonder if there's any kind of a story attached to it.
I'm looking at you.
I don't know anything definite. Instantly, I just thought about sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just my own reflection.
Yeah.
And a lot of the pieces are, have very much sound very much embedded in them.
Right.
Even you can like this music of universal silence.
Right.
Such a kind of that says so much, doesn't it? I mean, literally takes me out to the cosmos and the sound there.
Yeah.
But like that's my own thing. I thought with tongue is sound, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think that's really good. I like that. And also, I guess maybe there was an inspiration of like going back to kind of what you were talking about, spirits, and maybe some traditional works of like demons, and I know there's like some, I don't know if it's Kali, but there's like some Indian like classical art words where there's someone with a tongue, and also in Tibetan art. So maybe there's also a bit of that.
Yeah, well, that one with the tongue there, which is Kali.
That's Kali, yeah.
Mahakali. I guess it's just also making that 3D, bringing that 3D.
Yeah, because the one,
There's a great one
there of Dawn at the back.
Those are the sort of
Dawn's
three
tongue,
tongues that I really think about.
Dawn's
Like
tongue
these
is
three.
also
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah. And that comes back like Tibetan Lama, a friend of ours, likes to take the stuffing out of really stuffy people by doing something like sticking his tongue out at them. Or we had a German friend over, and this Lama friend came over for dinner, and he could kind of tell that this German friend was very important somehow, and he did a little salute that might have gotten him in a lot of trouble to our German friend, who thought it was hilarious. But it was sort of in a way to test the boundary, and it seems like that kind of like tongue sticking out gesture is a way of also taking the stuffing out, or introducing humor into a context that could otherwise be seen as like, oh, we're talking about the cosmos, and we're talking about the greatness of the universe, and we're talking about that, and then suddenly someone's giving you the raspberry.
Oh yeah, and the playfulness is that playfulness, and a lot of that throughout Moki's work, playfulness and satire, even on things that are really serious.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah. Somebody just pointed out the fact that the piece that we named our show after, which is Communicate Now, Communicate How, Communicate, how, question mark, which we thought was really beautiful, that there are 3 M's in communicate.
None of us had noticed it.
Communicate. How? It's nice, right?
Literally is like, when he brings that sound.
Communicate. Yeah, fantastic. We're about 5 minutes from closing. We were maybe not going to take any questions, but I want to take one question. I think we should do that. Shall we? Does anybody, who has the best question?
Hi, my name is Will. One of the questions I like to ask people who are involved in anything, doesn't matter if they're a carpenter, they're a painter, but in your own personal lives, the question I would ask is, how old were you when you discovered, I'll say this, oh my goodness, living what you love. What age were you to when you discovered that you wanted to live what you love, and just growing up in a family full of great sound, brilliant color? Maybe that's a 2-part question. How has it inspired you, and what age were you when you discovered you wanted to live what you love? And were you just living it already since you were around all this beautiful sound and color and art?
I'm interested
Nice
to know
question.
Naima. That's a beautiful question.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's an interesting full circle life, and obviously I feel like there's cycles all the time. But hearing you say that, I feel like it made me think of a kind of sensory freedom that I think I had when I was very small, that gave me an intention and a feeling and a, you know, of really knowing who I was, right? And I think maybe I was like 2 or 3 or something like that. And then I can remember like starting school and my mother being really, obviously seeing the effect of like how I was sitting and that that life was having on me, trying to fit in, and so I kind of passed through a whole journey. And then I think when I got to like 16, 17 and started making music, and I guess I moved to London, I feel like I had dots of that feeling that I'm thinking of that I might have felt when I was 2 or 3. And then, it continues. But I think I knew when I was at that place in my teens as a teenager, where all of a sudden I was introduced to a space where I was starting to discover my own creativity in a different way. I kind of recognized that feeling from maybe dancing to a record or something when I was like 3 years old, and tying fabric on my head, you know? And then I feel like it's just gone in cycles, and like maybe now at 61, I'm in another one of those, of feeling a sense of, you know, that I can kind of raise my head and be like, I've passed through enough shit and great things to, you know, hold my space and be, you know, and so I think it's a continuous thing, but I think that I feel very blessed. I feel an incredible amount of gratitude, you know, like sitting here talking about Don and Moki and with you and with everyone and seeing the work and being next to my daughter, knowing that, you know, I'm here because of a connection that runs all the way back through all the things that we've been talking about here and all the things and the places, you know, the places that my life has taken me to are very much because of what is being expressed in this room through these works. And I think sonically and spiritually, you know, I'm very aware of that, and I think, that's a very long answer. But you know, everything is connected. One thing leads to another, you know?
Totally.
But also, it's just when it's about the part of the question that was like, at what age? I feel like just from things you told me, that's a lot about why
I'm
you...
dancing with my mother in the corner. Look at that. Yeah, but go on.
You also explained that London was a big part of that became your own life and creative place, and your relationship with Ari and...
Yeah, so I think I didn't want to start talking about myself lots, but I kind of did.
But it's interesting also
But
to
I
know.
did move to London as a teenager, and I kind of ended up there also because of Don and Moki in a way. But I became very close friends with an artist and singer called Ari Up from the Slits. She was in a group called the Slits. They were a band of all women. And I joined a group called Rip Rig and Panic, which was also musically connected to, in a way, to where I came from, but also the music I was listening to. So, you know, but like, it's all connected. But that's, of course, where I made my own family and found my own creative space.
I'm thinking one step earlier in the schoolhouse in Sweden with the Octopus Theater.
Yeah, but that wasn't so much, that was Eagle Eye.
Really?
And his group of kids, because I was a little bit older.
Yeah.
So that really started to happen. It was a theater group that developed, that happened every summer. It was like in our house was a kind of hub, and all the kids in the community would develop a bunch of skits and then perform like have a show at the end of a summer. At the end of a summer, they would rehearse for like 6 weeks. And actually, a lot of the kids who were part of it have all gone off to be actors or work. Eagle Eye ended up in performing arts, and Moki was a part of sort of the set designs and stuff. But I was a bit older, so I wasn't so much. Yeah, I wasn't there. I was in one of the shows, pregnant with Naima. Yeah.
There's an urgent question here.
But hold on, what about you, Naima? What's your? I just started rambling on.
It's hard to answer, and I'll do a quick one. But I was thinking, first also like, coming from a family with so many artists and musicians on several generations, I guess is already then just the world that I was around. And when I was growing up, when they were making all of these children's, theatre productions every summer, and all the kids writing plays and everyone playing the music, and Moki making the sets and the costumes. So I guess I would come later straight into it, and less aware of the fact that not everyone's life is like that, I guess. I'm really grateful as well to see what Don and Moki created from when they found that place with only just enough money to buy it and no other money, to get that place and have a vision. Okay, this could be a really creative and positive place for our family, for our friends. And at a time, way before the internet, bringing, all these books and music there from all parts of the world that I'm still learning from today, and still finding books. And most of the music that I have learned about, jazz and Indian music and music from all the world, from that record collection as a foundation. I'm so grateful for what they created that wasn't, so straightforward and obvious in 1970. It's not all rosy whatsoever. I think many people here that are artists and know it's so uncertain how you're ever going to survive and have to believe in it, and I know many times, didn't have money to even get food and things like that. And, as it happens, a lot of creative people, there's always difficulties with, drug addiction, all these things. But still, it's it has definitely made me who I am. But it took me a while to figure out who I am in that, because it can also just be all the things around you, or take it for granted. There's many people who have really creative parents and then just want to be completely normal. And I think we all go through that, And I think, I became a mother when I was really young as well, which my mother did when I was born. She was 18, and Moki became a mother when she was 21. I became a mother when I was 21, because it seemed like a normal thing to do. Definitely not easy, and I wouldn't advise most people to do it. I did the same thing, and took me probably another 10 years to figure out what I really wanted to do, even though I was studying. I was a visual artist since I was young, and less involved with music, because I always helped Moki with her exhibitions and spent time with her every summer in the studio, and she would keep me busy. And then I helped install her shows from when I was a teenager with her till when she died. So I thought like, well, I'm just a visual artist too. And then it took me a while. I mean, I learned piano and I was always taking in everything. But it was really when my son got a little bit older, in my early 30s, like 10 years ago, when I went back to playing the piano and realized that I was missing something, thinking in a way that I was like, not a musician, because that's just what everyone else does and I don't want to be the same. And when I found this way of incorporating all the different things I do with the music, for me, I think I was just, when I found that, when I was maybe had a bit more space and not just being somebody's mother, not that is just, that's a lot, that's a huge job. But I had that creative space, and then went back to playing the piano and found that way of expressing something that I couldn't find any other way of expressing. For me, just kind of in relation to your question, it's just like really find who I was within that, because it's hard. Also, when everyone is, there's a lot of big personalities and artists to figure out, well, what do I do? They already doing it all or whatever,
Yeah, we have to find our own voices.
Yeah, and it's not a competition, it's just expressing,
No. And I think that, sometimes like I say, you've heard me say it a million times, but, we're all creative people. And sometimes, the focus, when you use the word creativity, focuses on, visual art or music, but actually we all have creative energy. And we all have different ways where ways of expressing creatively, and sometimes you have several ways. And I think you're one of those people where you have, and I definitely have several things. I have an outlet that happens through music, but sometimes I just walk. Sometimes when I don't say anything is when I'm at my most creative. And I think Moki was like that. I cook. That's one of my, gardening. Moki had a thing with so it's the inner and outer dialogue, and sometimes figuring out, being in tune with your creative expression and creative listening takes a while to crack your own Rubik's Cube. And actually, Don and Moki, that was a thing that I guess I could really say thank you, and I think it's passed on through our line, is that they were very big supporters, I think, of this idea of, Don used to just be like, don't let them change you. Be who you are. Don't let them change you. And that was actually when I started having some success and out in those trenches of the music industry. That was, Massive Attack used to say, don't sell out, Jack. Don said, don't let them change you. Don't let them change you.
That's beautiful.
And that's about, you're staying with and it's noisy in the world, isn't it? So
that's our mantra for the day. Don't let them change you.
Exactly.
Don't let them change you.
I think this is a good, we're gonna let don't let them change you be the last word today.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say thank you for this amazing exhibition, to everybody who participated in putting it together.
Thank you.
And
Yes,
everybody
thank you.
in Philadelphia should come out and see this many times, because it's not going to be assembled like this again for a long, long time, probably. Or if it is, it won't be here. So you should come see it and live in it the way it was meant to be lived in, and enjoy it with the sound on, because sound is a big part of this exhibition and Lisa's exhibition as well. And so I just want to say what an honor it is to be up here with you guys.
It's so fun.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.